Welcome to Real Parenting for the Sensitive Moms, for moms who feel everything and still show up. I'm Adrienne Bishop, your co-host and parenting coach.
And I'm Leah Andrioni, your co-host and perinatal mental health therapist. We're here to help you understand your sensitivity, give you real tools that actually work, and connect you with a community of moms who truly get it.
Today we will be talking to Alane Freund, a consultant, speaker, and psychotherapist. Alane has worked in mental health for over 3 decades, an international consultant on high sensitivity. Ms. Freund develops and implements programs for highly sensitive people, youth, and clinicians. She holds a master's degree in both clinical psychology and school counseling, and is the parent of a highly sensitive young adult. All of that experience adds up to a deep and wide toolkit that she uses to coach sensitive youth and families.
Alane's widely acclaimed talk at Google, Understanding the Highly Sensitive Person, has over 1 million views. She hosts the Are You Highly Sensitive to community and YouTube channel, as well as leading small group sensitivity circles for clinician consultation, parenting sensitive youth, sensitive and anxious youth, highly sensitive professionals, and highly sensitive women. Her mission is to reach and impact every sensitive youth on the planet, one highly sensitive person, teacher, parent, and healthcare provider at a time.
I wanted to have Alane on to talk about her expertise working with parents of kids who are highly sensitive, may have ADHD and or anxiety, to help parents understand the differences between those 3 things. I was a part of her membership, in fact, for highly sensitive people for about a year. She offered masterclasses every month on a different topic related to being highly sensitive, and I enjoyed all of them. She had masterclasses focused on parenting, and I used her own advice with my own children who are sensitive, especially for my daughter who had anxiety. I learned a lot about how to work with her from Alane, and she is just a wealth of knowledge on being highly sensitive and more. And so I'm super excited to have her on today and be talking with her. So thank you so much for being on the show, Alane.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. It's my favorite thing to do.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about some questions we got from parents that are wondering about their sensitive child and have some questions for you. So I'm very excited to get started on that.
So when I'm answering questions, I want to just put out a few disclaimers. I'm a family therapist, and at some point in your career, in your life, you might want to stop bragging about how long you've been working. But I have no shame. So I've been in mental health for about 35 years, and
Wow.
I have learned so much. I've worked in schools. I've worked in community mental health. I've had a private practice. I've done a lot of parent coaching. So I have a wide breadth of knowledge and a lot of great ideas. But on a podcast or even anywhere outside the state of California, I'm not working as a psychotherapist. Yes, I'm bringing my clinical psychology and school counseling knowledge and all my clinical experience to bear. And as an international consultant on high sensitivity, I'm committed to only presenting information that is found in the science, that's researched. I'm not making any guesses here. The problem is there are as many different ways to be highly sensitive as there are highly sensitive people and children. There are as many different ways to be a child as there are children. So while I might have some specific suggestions for a parent, without knowing your whole story, I love Q&A. I do Q&A now in my membership. I do it 3 times a month, almost weekly, just open Q&A office hours for anybody to ask anything they like.
Yeah.
The problem with these questions is people can submit them ahead of time, and I don't have the backstory.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's happening today. The other thing I want to say as a disclaimer is you need professional assessment and medical clearance. So whenever there's a lot going on with a child, I want to rule out any medical issues. There's this one little problem with that, though. A lot of times when you go to the pediatrician or even the average psychologist or child therapist, they might not even know about temperament. And high sensitivity is a part of temperament. We're not trained. I didn't learn about it until my own child was in Waldorf school. And then after that, I met Elaine Aron, and she made me read a bunch of books and learn all about temperament. And it's a very important piece. It's not a disorder. It's not a diagnosis. It's not an illness. But when you see someone who specializes in ADHD, they see ADHD. When you see someone who specializes in the autism spectrum or in autism, they see autism. So it is a very complex and complicated process of differential diagnosis. And here's the paradox, or maybe the catch-22 about it. We're not even talking about a diagnosis when we're talking about temperament. It's just how you're born. So with those disclaimers in mind, I'll refer back to them for certain questions.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you were saying that some people are just not aware, some clinicians, some medical professionals, they just don't have this knowledge. And that's just kind of how it is. And, I know you're trying to work to change that. And so am I. And let's hope that that happens. But we always have to keep that in mind that sometimes people are just not aware that there's a temperament involved and maybe not a disorder or maybe both. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention today, because when I have clients come to me, it is a very fine line that we're walking when it comes to, are we sensitive? Do we have ADHD? Is there something else going on? Is there giftedness? Do I need medication? Do I need to get a diagnosis? So it's confusing, and parents are really, really struggling. They really are. They don't know what direction to go in. So that's why we have you on today. So the first situation that a parent submitted to me was about her 4-year-old. So this is a girl, and she has these very intense tantrums where she sees red, essentially, about 20 to 30 minutes a couple times a day. Most of it is when she gets told no, she can't get her way. And the mom has tried to leave the room and tried to say, I'll be back in a few minutes, give her some time to calm down. She's validated her. But the problem is when she tries to kind of take a break or leave the room for a few minutes, she follows her crying and screaming. And so that's not really working super well. And the mom, she did admit to me, she also is very triggered by her daughter because she was like that as a kid. So that's involved too. I think that's creating some issues with her being calm around her daughter. But I know that there is calmness happening to some extent. She does not do screens. This mom is a screen-free mom. She's very, very, I would say, crunchy. She has her kid outside a lot. And the daughter goes to school, doesn't have a problem. And she told me she's getting evaluated by an occupational therapist for her reflexes, which I think was an issue at some point. And she has ADHD, this mom also. So she's not sure what is going on. And I did notice that there was an uptick in tantrums during sick times. So I was thinking there's some physical sensitivities, some low pain tolerance challenges. That was my thought. But I'm just curious, what are you getting from this?
I wrote an amends letter to my parents.
Yes.
I was not an easy baby, toddler, or child. And because I was aware of everything. So let's just talk for a moment about language and diagnoses and how some of the language is also confusing.
Yeah.
So there is a diagnosis that your occupational therapist, that's what OT means, can probably diagnose, and it's called sensory processing disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And many sensitive children do have sensory processing disorder. So do many autistic children.
Mm-hmm.
And other people, usually one of those two things lead to it, but there can be other physiological issues that can create a heightened level of sensitivity to one's environment, especially in the body. And I love OT for sensitive kids.
Yeah.
That you cannot go wrong with a pediatric OT. And if you don't like the person or your child doesn't like them and you're not getting what you need, try somebody else. And you know what also is great about OT? It's almost always covered by health insurance. So how do you find one? You go to your pediatrician. You might end up going through your social network and finding someone who's not on insurance, but you can always start with insurance, which is great because it takes a lot of money to raise these high achieving children. Let's just call them high achieving, because if you could channel all that energy, this girl could run the country, right? When she grows up.
So smart. This girl's so smart. I know it.
I always used to say, and please don't take offense at this, but if you don't strangle her or she doesn't strangle you before she becomes an adult, she'll be the most impressive person ever.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a journey. It's really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I think generally we would say that most children at age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 who are sensitive look like ADHD. ADHD stands for attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. But it would be almost impossible to truly diagnose a young child with ADHD. That doesn't mean people aren't doing it, but their brains are so undeveloped that we're not ready to make that kind of a decision or a diagnosis about it. Because we know anybody, for any reason, who is overwhelmed is going to have trouble focusing.
Right.
They're going to be highly distractible. You're having a lot of tantrums. And according to Adrienne, you're spending time outside. I love that there's no screens. You're eating healthy food. She's eating healthy food, lots of protein. I'm not going to say anything about the diagnosis because I don't know. 2 tacks here. Mom, you have to do more things to take care of your nervous system. This is hard. I almost never use that word. This is the biggest challenge of your life. This too shall pass. It will get easier. You're going to have relief for a few years. And then when she's like 14 or 15, you might want to move out. She'll be exactly the same. So let me just give one of my global truths about raising sensitive kids. When they are under the age of 10 or 11, when they're overwhelmed, when they're not in their perfect space, I call that optimal level of arousal, they are half their age. So when you get a 4-year-old, you expect her to start to be a little bit more independent, to be able to do some things. Maybe she's learning to tie her shoes. She could even go in the bathroom and brush her teeth without you. Although when I was 4, I just went in the bathroom and pretended to brush my teeth because I was like this, a bright, very active. We could go over what this child's 9 temperaments are. I was like that too. But that's what you're expecting. And when she is at her best self, if she's sensitive, which I suspect she is, she's plus 30. So basically, you're either having a 2-year-old who really can't do anything by themselves. They need to be glued to the parent at all times. Mom, especially if mom's the primary parent. Think about a 2-year-old. Remember her when she was 2. Basically, you probably had her on your hip a lot of the time or in a backpack at your side, clinging to your pant leg.
Yeah.
So when she's in a hard place, she's 2. This is true for every age of child. I'll get to the adolescence in a minute, what this math is. And then sometimes she's 34. She comes out with she says things you can't even believe she said. Her sense of humor is profound. She's observing. You said something last week. You used vocabulary that you thought she'd never even heard before or could not possibly know. You thought you were talking grown up, and she parrots it back to you and probably has some thoughts about it.
Yeah.
So that's really confusing. I don't call that ADHD, right? Mm-hmm. I call that development. And when you are processing deeply, when you are paying attention and noticing the subtleties, she's likely noticing things that you're not even aware are noticeable, right? And then she's having her strong emotional reactions. Her brain's just working differently than the average child. That's the other thing, parents. This is a global advice. You can't compare your child to anybody else's child. And this parent also is probably getting some flack, some criticism, whether it's overt or not, from her community, from people at the preschool, from her family, from her mother, maybe especially from her mother-in-law. So these places make mom feel more agitated, worried. You're not really able to be right there in the present moment with her because you're so worried about her health, her mental health, the family, the community. How are you going to survive this?
One of the biggest things she says is, I think she has inflammation. I think it's inflammation. She's like, is trying to solve it in any way possible. Yeah.
Yes, I want the answer too. And there's no answer. I'm sorry, there may be an answer, but it's more likely that there's not an answer, at least not an easy answer at this point. Maybe she's celiac. Maybe she's having major food sensitivities. Maybe we don't know. And it's hard not to know. So you can diagnose at this age for autism. And sometimes children who are almost always activated, who are very, very extreme in their activation, that could be what's going on because they don't know how to process the information coming in. So all of that said, if you have not read Elaine Aron's The Highly Sensitive Parent, I recommend you read it. One of the things she says in there, I'm just going to give you a Cliff Notes version: spend less time with your child and more time taking care of yourself. Because you can't do this parenting journey if you're always feeling strung out, right? If your nervous system is always dysregulated and activated. Yes. So strap the child into a jogger stroller and go running. Put her on your back and hike up hills. Do whatever you can. She can scream. That's okay. Do whatever you can to burn off the stress and agitation. Make yourself so physically exhausted that you can't worry, mom. Also, how do you find time to meditate? In Untamed, Glennon Doyle talks about how in the beginning, she just went and sat in her closet with the lights off. And I have to say, yes, my child, the one lock in the house was on my bathroom door. And if you have not yet trained your children, no matter the age, that the bathroom is a private place, it's time. That's okay. They can pound and pound and pound and scream outside the door while you go to the bathroom. You have to have a break. And so then for the child, I'm going to offer that take the time, and you're already exhausted, but to take the time to weave her into your daily work. One thing about bright, sensitive kids, and what's good for sensitive kids is good for all kids. So if you don't think your kid's sensitive, it doesn't matter. Everything we say today will benefit your child. But for bright, sensitive kids, it's almost necessary. They are seeing everything that's going on, so they need to be a part of everything that's going on. And that's one of the reasons you can't leave her, that she won't let you. You can leave her, but she won't let you. And so it's really important to put her to work and give her a job to do alongside you with everything you do. At the same time, like I said, you have to have some childcare and you have to have some time away. I'm going to stop there. There's so much more, but some of the other questions will apply to this one.
I agree. And I know that this mom also has a 2-year-old. And so that is creating some challenges because she's also overtired.
It's like you have twins. Let me just say one more thing to the mom now that I know that. Your 4-year-old is your 2-year-old. You have two 2-year-olds. Stop thinking that they're different. I'm sorry, they are not. They won't be for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also this 2-year-old, like you were saying, the comparison, the 2-year-old is incredibly calm, does not cry, does not tantrum. And so she immediately goes to this 4-year-old is a problem because there's something wrong with her because clearly the little boy is a different personality. He's more of that calmer, highly sensitive kid who's just sort of observant and looks around and is very laid back, which is one of mine. So I know what it's like. My first one was just like hers. And then the second one was super calm. And you're like, wait a minute, something has gone wrong. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And they say that you never get the same child twice because you couldn't do it. Thank goodness.
I agree.
Yeah. This 4-year-old sounds just like my daughter when she was 2, 3, 4. I mean, her tantrums were actually more like 45 minutes long. So I feel for this mama. I definitely do. And even trying to compare the two kids, my first child was not, having tantrums at this age either. So you're always comparing. So I just want to validate her experience and be like, yep, it's real. And I think it's super interesting that, Alane, you say that the 4-year-old is like the 2-year-old emotionally, right? That's where she is. So to kind of reframe that, I really think that would have helped me if I was in the same situation. But I really like that you said for mom to really focus on herself, to focus on her nervous system, because I have learned that when I am calmer and I'm able to speak to my daughter differently, it makes a world of a difference, right? Because she's feeding off of me. Right? That sensitivity is sensitivity to everything, all that energy. And just like you said with making her a part of everything that the mom's doing, my daughter from birth has been attached to my hip. She's 10. She would still be attached to my hip. So we use body doubling to get things done just so she's there. And kind of like you were saying, my daughter was little, having tantrums, and now at 10, I consider her as my almost executive assistant. Like she's so much older because she's able to do the things with or without me asking and kind of taking over. And now that my brain is not working as much as I get older, she is now my brain and she loves it and she thrives in that too.
Right. So she'll run the world too.
We're banking on it. We're banking on it. So I love this question because it's very, very similar to what I have experienced. I continue to experience, and I can also tell the mom it does get easier. Now that she's 10, it is getting easier. It's still a struggle. We can still bicker like old ladies together. But as I'm regulating myself, I am seeing that she's able to feed off of that too.
Thank you, Leah. And let's just take the math and apply it to Leah's daughter. So when she's overwhelmed, exhausted, she's 5, and 5-year-olds are much easier to deal with than 2-year-olds. Probably most parents listening to this have the experience of a 2-year-old at the very least. So let me just say 5 has its own challenges, but it's so much easier. Mm-hmm. And then when she's your executive assistant plus 30, she's 40. And you made me think of one thing I want to say about tantrums that I didn't say. Tantrums are not fixable. They're only preventable. They are preventable, actually. Amen. It's just in the modern world, we're almost never able to do exactly what it takes to get that perfect recipe of rest, exercise, nutrition, stimulation, solitude to prevent the tantrum. But the work piece is the best tool that you can. If this was a client of mine, I would have her log everything that happens hour by hour in the family from starting for a week. So starting today and for the next week, and you will find exactly what the precursor for a tantrum can happen as much as 48 hours prior to the tantrum itself. Oh. So you can almost predict when the tantrums are going to happen. You really can. You know your daughter that well. So give it a shot and then give me a call. Let's talk it out.
I love it. All right. So our next question is a younger child. So, and this is a parent with an 18-month-old boy When they bring them to the library, he doesn't really play with the kids. He won't go over to them. He stays close to the parents. He doesn't even seem to notice that the kids are there, much less play with them. And he doesn't speak too much yet either. They're trying to speak to him, but he just isn't responding. The thing about this couple, though, I should say, is that they only have him 3 days a week, every other week, because it's a part-time parent. So it's a shared custody situation. So the stepmom actually is very concerned about his slow to warm up, like his tendency to not want to go automatically over and be little kid-like and play and have these little kid behaviors. And she is constantly talking about, is there something wrong? Is he not meeting a milestone, or does he need to be evaluated, or should I talk to my pediatrician about it?
Let's jump into this one real quick, because listen, an 18-month-old, it's almost like being bilingual. The first thing I was going to ask is this child in a family with more than one spoken language? That when I first read the question or heard you saying the question, because that will make a child slower to speak because they're learning two languages. This child is learning, if they only have him 3 days every other week, it makes me think that maybe there are more than two households, but just let's say there's two households. If this child's in two separate households, they're learning different languages. They are going to be slower to develop. Most children, especially the sensitive ones who are noticing, I have no idea. I would need so much more information to know if this child was sensitive or not. But this child has, I would say, I would not be remotely concerned about this one developmentally based on what the life is for him. Now, if he's only with you every other week, you're practically a stranger, even though you're a parent. And he needs more of you. He needs you badly. So I would be surprised if he was going off to the other children. So I wouldn't make any assumptions about this one developmentally at this stage. I'd want to also see what's going on in every environment where he goes. But based on the backstory that Adrienne just told us, I'm going to say, keep him close. And sometimes we might say that a child that is really clingy has a more, which is kind of what we're saying. I don't mean to put that word on it, but who's wants to stay attached to mom at all times. This is different from the previous child. This kind of child, we might say they have an insecure attachment. And of course he does at 18 months. He's moving around from house to house. He has different parents. He's trying to read the room and figure it out. And he is so confused. So how about if you just take my advice from before and make him half his age when he's with you? When he wants to go running off and, or tearing things apart or banging the pots, all the things that an 18-month-old does, awesome. But when he doesn't feel ready to jump into the library story time or whatever it is, then hold him close and keep him with you. Pick him up and keep him on your chest and give him that physical contact that he needs, and use your body to regulate his body. One of the things that we say about attachment is the closer you hold them, the more independent they will be. Children don't need help becoming independent. Children need help being attached. So keep him close. Say things, and whenever you can, put him on his back in your arms like a baby and cradle him and rock him and say, "You're my sweet, sweet baby. I love you so much. I remember when you were so small that you didn't even cover my whole body when I held you. And oh my gosh, you feel so big. But I remember when you were a tiny little baby, and I love my tiny baby." And give him baby kisses, like little kisses all around his face and his eyelids, little tiny baby kisses, and call them baby kisses. Stroke his hair and stroke his eyelids and his face, and give him the kind of baby love that he needs from you. Because I don't know how long you've been in separate households. It doesn't really matter. But I like to think of, when I say to people who adopt children, that at the age they were adopted, that's when their life started over. So for the adoptive family, and I worked with a family for a long time, they adopted their daughter at age 5, and she was bouncing around to different households and foster care at some point. And they were just baffled when she was 9, why she was so not fitting in with the other 9-year-old girls. I said, you know what? That's because she's 4. Give her the space to be 4. That was probably the germ of my cutting their age in half and adding 30. So let this little one be little, and don't worry too much for now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like the households are very different. When I talk to them about the other household and how does the mom tell them what's going on, it's very different. He talks a lot. He runs around. He's very social. So I feel like it's just an adjustment. He has to adjust every single time he goes back to that house. And he's so little, I'm sure it's really difficult. So I love this idea of maybe treating him like, half the age, giving him lots of really close love, lots of attachment. The stepmom is an amazing girl, amazing woman. She really cares about him. So I feel like it's a good situation for him to be in, and they're gonna, they're gonna figure it out for sure. I
The
love
other
that.
thing, she needs to make friends with the other mom, and they need to go to the park together. And I know that's hard in divorce. And if the child's only 18 months, it's a relatively new divorce. But families need to put the child first. And it's really helpful to bring the stepmom and the mom together, because she's probably ticked at her ex, right? They might not need to be together, but the two moms can come together because they both love the child. And finally, a tool that we always used in foster care is to have a special suitcase, bag, box, or whatever that has the same 8 things in it that always go from house to house, no matter what. And so, and the box can be edited, but only when, as a community event. So he works together with the house where he lives most, and he creates this box of 4 things. And then he gets 4 things from the other house. And these 8 things go back and forth with him no matter what. He always has it with him. And that becomes his secure attachment and teaches him about being attached.
I love that. And the moms do talk about how things are at each household, and they try to duplicate the way things are done, the same kind of diaper or the same kind of
Adrian, just tell them to go to the park together.
I love that. Perfect. Great suggestion.
So the next question is, my 15-year-old has social anxiety, OCD, and refuses to go to school. She has somatic symptoms like nausea and headaches all the time. She struggles with schoolwork and staying organized. She is spacey. She has missed 15 days of school, and I don't know how to help her. She is seeing a therapist is on medication for anxiety. Should I homeschool her? Should I find her a new school? She is in a new school right now. What if I homeschool her and it makes her anxiety worse? This is a great question, I will say, because when I used to see kids and a lot of the parenting work that I do now, school refusal is huge. I mean, especially these days, especially with teens, going on, since the pandemic and everything. So this is a very, very common situation, and the somatic symptoms are very common. And I know that homeschool has kind of blown up also since the pandemic. I know so many parents took kids out of school and are now homeschooling. So it's, not out of the realm of possibility. So I'd love to hear what you have to say regarding this one.
15. It's a very challenging time in life. And something tells me that it didn't just happen at 15, that this has been a system that has been building. I've been encountering more and more sensitive youth who are having OCD or symptoms of OCD. And, I call that, the way I think about it in my mind is it's high sensitivity that has gone off the rails. And so let's talk about what a child needs as they're growing up if they're highly sensitive. We tend to be so laissez-faire now. We parents, we're so kind, and we listen, and we mirror back what they're saying, and we use nonviolent communication. All these things are good things. They're definitely better than smacking them across the face. And, like
True.
I'm 61. I was backhanded at the dinner table a few times, and I may have deserved it, but we know that that's not what we want.
Yeah.
But there's something in between. And the more sensitive a child is, the more structure they need. I call it rhythm and routine. And we need rhythm and routine in our lives. And as an adult, a grown-ass woman, as I say, I need so much rhythm and routine to keep my anxiety at a low roar, because I also am challenged by anxiety.
Me too.
And so when you're 15, okay, let's do the math. Now we're in teenage years. So around 11 or 12, when hormones start to hit, the regression is much worse. So when you're a 15-year-old, you're minus 10. When you're having anxiety, you're overwhelmed, you find yourself in a 5-year-old brain and a 5-year-old body. Like all child development, everything's plus or minus a year. But most 15-year-olds, when I tell them this, they totally relate, because they feel so powerless when this is happening. They don't even know why it's happening. And they're so confused by their brain and why they feel so different from their peers. And especially when sometimes they're plus 30. So when she's a 45-year-old, which a lot of 15-year-old sensitive kids are.
Yep.
She's rocking it with the adults. She's so astute. She knows so much. Her sense of humor is so subtle and yet profound. And she feels the world. So I think once you're in OCD symptoms, you probably do need some medication to help. We can try some behavioral training and exposure therapy. I have a great video on YouTube called No, I Won't, the P allegory. And this was actually about a 15-year-old boy when I made up this allegory. And he was refusing to eat completely. So there's school refusal, there's food refusal, there's all sorts of different kinds of OCD symptoms around refusal. And so it's just exposure therapy. And I'm not going to go into it right now because we want to get as many questions as we can in this short time. But go look up the PL. We'll put the link.
Yes, I'll put them in the show notes. Yes. Love it.
So I'll say that OCD, there's some excellent treatment. When it gets really extreme, it requires residential treatment. Most parents are freaked out about that. But you are not good enough to do it. You're not professionals. And I've tried also when there's substance abuse going on and addiction for screens or substances, generally that requires residential treatment. This just breaks your heart to hear this mom's story. And we are not able to be as strict and regimented. And plus we probably have jobs. We're not able to do what it takes to help someone break an addiction. OCD is much in the brain, much like an addiction. Okay. Anxiety is the real deal. It is our brain saying it's too much. And it is also, the saber-toothed tiger jumping on us. And so there's a lot of great anxiety treatment. But when you're highly sensitive, anxiety is actually a positive thing. And I like to reframe it and do some paradoxical intervention around anxiety when you're highly sensitive, especially youth. It is literally your brain saying that this situation doesn't feel safe. So you got a couple choices: change the situation or change the brain. And so you can talk to the brain and really take the anxiety brain. I do equine assisted therapy for local youth. And the way we work with the horses is the horse often is named the different brains. It's like what's called parts work in internal family systems, if you want it. Yeah. And we do this not with the horses too. It's just especially easy with the horses. So, you've got the worried brain. You've got the school brain. You've got for one kid, I remember it was the artist brain. The kid was an artist. And so whenever he was making art, he didn't have any anxiety or OCD symptoms. There are those parts of her brain. You can work with the brain that way. That is a mental health process, a really skilled youth therapist. It's very important. And I would bet big money that this girl is highly sensitive. It's important that the therapist, just because they're an expert in OCD, and maybe cognitive behavioral therapy, doesn't mean that they're an expert about sensitivity. Why is that so important? It's the same as what we'll have with the ADHD questions. The treatment's a little different and the medication is different. So if medication comes into play. So it's really important that you find a therapist that is either willing to learn about highly sensitive youth or already knows about it. And I'm happy to help people find therapists as well, based on where they live, because we don't want to see therapy clients out too far away because we want to be available in case of emergency. Now, school is not a great place for this kid. Really, if she were my kid, actually, this kind of is my kid. I begged him to drop out of high school for a while. And in California, we have this deal where kids can take college classes. And for every semester of a community college class, it's worth 2 semesters of high school credit. So you can, trickle your way through. You say you only spend, 3 hours 3 times a week at school as opposed to all day, every day. It's exhausting when you're sensitive to have to be at school. Homeschooling, don't recommend it, Mom. I really don't. I wouldn't put myself through it personally. But back to my own child, he refused. And a lot of sensitive kids are so aware they refuse to quit school because they have worked so hard and they don't want to have another way that they are different. And what few friends or social engagements that they have at school are kind of holding them together. So school's a hard place. And if you could possibly allow her get a medical leave, I write medical leaves all the time for my kid clients. Oh, pull her out for 3 months, let her have a reset. You can do all these things. It's possible. You do need a doctor's note or a therapist note to get a medical leave of absence. And rhythm and routine. She needs more strictness. And so this is where I'm going to bring up my 10 pillars of resilience for raising sensitive kids, youth. The pillars of resilience are things like mentoring, job, community service, sport/exercise. There are 10 of them. I'm not going to list them all off right now, but I was thinking that might be the thing that we could make a free gift.
Oh, that'd be great.
People who are listening to the podcast to see the 10 pillars of resilience, because she's not feeling resilient. And I suspect she's not all that resilient. But the good news about sensitive people is we're more responsive to our environment. We are actually more resilient than people who are not sensitive, including the kids. So she can take these tools when you put them in place, and she might be resistant. And you might have to do a really good job of creating a yes and environment for her. And then finally, the number one cause of mental illness in teenage girls, social media. The number one cause of mental illness in adolescent boys and tweens as well. This adolescence is now from basically 10 to 30. Bad news, parents, I'm so sorry. But the human lifespan has extended and opportunities have closed in. And therefore, we don't really see the true launch into adulthood until 2030.
True.
Psychological research. It's not just me being hysterical. And I'm really, really, really sorry to tell you this. However, mental illness, the number one cause of mental illness in boys is video games. So a lot of times when girls especially are feeling really anxious, they are accessing social media in some way. And so that needs to be a lockdown. And John Haidt wrote this great book, The Anxious Generation. I'm sure almost everybody's read it by now. If you haven't, it's a must read for raising children. If your kids are 5, it's not too early to read it. But then actually, you and I were talking about this, right, Adrian, that they now have made a book. He and his co-writer have made a book for kids, for youth, to help them find their way. Okay, we have to leave it. This is a very complex case. And you know why? Because there are 2 clients, the parents and the youth, because the youth has to have buy-in.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, because she's older, so it makes a big difference in that aspect. And I do know that there is some medication that she had to get off of because it was not working with her system. So there's the sensitive connection. If we don't have therapists that understand sensitivities, you're going to have, and then on top of it, as she was coming off the medication, more nausea, like from the medication and from the psychosomatic symptoms. So the whole thing just sort of blew up in their face, and it took months.
And the hormones.
It's definitely a challenge. Leah, can you read the number 5?
When my daughter, she's around 10, she is stuck in a tantrum, and this can last for a pretty long time. What's the best way to help a child when they're actively in a tantrum? What should the parent do? What should the parent not do?
So, now we're talking about a 10-year-old, but in the tantrum 5. So I don't allow tantrums in my presence in a 10-year-old. Like, there needs to be a family meeting to talk about what kinds of actions and responses are acceptable in public, in the family, in the presence of other people, and in private. Actually, my son was being interviewed by some parents who are raising sensitive kids. And he said he thought the thing that most helped him in his childhood was that he knew that everything he felt was acceptable, but many behaviors were not. And so this is where you dial this back. Once she's in the tantrum, you've lost it, because that's a spin out, right? We spin out too. I don't know about you all, but I spin out plenty. And so you know what it's like. And the Gottmans, they teach couples therapy, and they did some really great research on how people are unable to learn or change when their heart rate is elevated above a certain level. They say 100 beats per minute, but for sensitive people, it could be much lower. I always say, figure it out. But if you notice and you teach the child pulse rate, and when is it elevated? And so what we want to know, moms, dads, adults, kids, we want to recognize the feeling coming. We want to know that it's on the approach. I have this funny conversation. I lead a group for older women once a month. And we were talking one time, how do we know when we're starting to get into overwhelm, which, can just basically be a tantrum. We don't call it that usually when we're grown-ups. And one of the things we said is we start dropping swear words. We're cursing. Like if the F-bombs are coming, so is the anxiety attack or the overwhelm. So we want to teach these children to recognize when they're starting to become escalated, elevated, dysregulated, whatever. You teach them all the words, teach them everything it means, and then we teach them tools to take care of it. And a lot of times it's simple as taking a walk around the block or putting on your audiobook. We want the 10-year-old to talk about her feelings when she's starting to feel upset. I just don't think that's realistic. And I think it's kind of mean. I don't want to talk about my feelings when I'm starting to feel upset. I'm like, F you. So
Just going to say, 'cause it sounds like what I'm hearing coming through a lot is that, really managing the expectations that we have for these kids. So if we see a 10-year-old, we want them to act like a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old acting like a 14-year-old. But when they're having all these emotions, part of our brain shuts off and they're a lot younger.
Yeah.
So if we can think of them as a lot younger, well, it'll manage our expectations and it feels like we might be able to meet the kids where they're at a little bit easier.
Totally. I just want to say, when you have a child that's different, that's really challenging, that's grief. I could cry right now just talking about it. That's not what you imagined when you started talking about adoption or when you were growing a baby in your belly or when you were talking about making a baby. It's not the dream. But I do want to just affirm that these children are unique for a reason. Evolution would not have created these kids if we didn't need them. Okay, so and it is so hard. I got to tell you, my child also had severe physical disabilities and he had cardiac issues and almost died 3 times. So I had this highly active, highly reactive, very intense, very sensitive child who also kept trying to die on me. And that is really challenging. We all have these kinds of challenges and it's not what you signed up for. So I just want to know, I want to say, I'm giving you all this kind of pat advice and maybe it sounds like I don't really get where you are. I just told you a little bit about my kid because I want you to know, I get it. I've been there in those trenches and it is the trenches. But I think this child, the 10-year-old, is old enough to be educated. I'll just give you an example from my own kid and his cardiac stuff. It's really interesting because he had supraventricular tachycardia, which means at any random moment, it started when he was 3 months old, went latent. It goes latent usually from 2 or 3 until pre-puberty. His came back at age 8, but that kind of makes sense because pre-puberty is getting earlier and earlier. And at any given time, it'll pop into 300 beats a minute. And if that goes on for an hour or 2, it can cause brain damage. So you can kind of only imagine what my life was like. But when it started coming back when he was 8, he could feel it coming. He could feel that it was starting. And so we had tools that we used. So the first one was to tell an adult that it was happening. And then it just turned out for him, we needed to create a dive reflex. Often we did go to the ER. Sometimes drugs were involved. But we learned that if he stood on his head for about 60 seconds, his heart would reset. And so we learned how, and like, did I have to teach my child to stand on his head? No, I mean, he's very athletic. I might've been able to do it, but we learned to put his head on my shoes and he would bend over and put his head on my feet. I would sit down and then he'd kick one leg up. I'd grab it. Then he'd kick the other leg up and I would hold him with upside down on my feet for 60 seconds. And then he'd say, okay, it's good. So that tantrums are the same. You can feel it coming. You can do the tools. You brainstorm with your 10-year-old or your 9-year-old, even the 8-year-old. What helps? What are the signs? Do your clothes start to feel really itchy? Do you start to feel warm? Do you get the tummy ache, the somatic symptoms? They know. They just need to be encouraged to recognize the symptoms, just like we do.
I love it. What if you do with a very stubborn child who just constantly says, I don't know. I don't know. Would you bring in different like visual tools for them?
Could, but I think when you get the I don't know child, they're afraid. So you have to get back into the 5-year-old if we're talking about a 10-year-old. And what does it take to get the 5-year-old in their best space? Like, what the physical activity is, the diet, the sleep. You plan to get them to a place for 48 hours prior to the conversation. A great thing to do with these children is, they probably didn't get that very persistent temperament out of nowhere. There's probably someone in the family who also is very persistent, AKA stubborn, and very challenged to go outside of it. So you tell stories, and they can be visual, but it's best always if you make up the stories and you tell them that they have some truth in them about what has happened. One of the things one tool I give parents is to just create a semi-pseudo situation with your co-parent or an older child or your friend, or you're on the phone you can even pretend to be on the phone, and you tell a story about your own experience or about someone else's experience that is similar to this child. So slowly but surely you get it in. If they're not able to have the conversation with you, But there's always this place. Okay, now let me come back to the 5-year-old. Do you know how you tell your 5-year-old these stories? Through animals. And, like if you have someone who's worried about going to school and there's ever developmentally a 5-year-old, you read them The Kissing Hand, and you create a kissing hand story for them. If you don't know the book, it's phenomenal. So I just strongly recommend that you grab it. Everybody read it. I think I'm reading it on my YouTube. I read books for sensitive youth on my YouTube channel, for sensitive kids on my YouTube channel. So I think it might be there. So anyway, The Kissing Hand is a phenomenal book, and it's an allegory using the raccoons. You have a child that feels completely different and unique in a way that's uncomfortable for them. You pick up Giraffes Can't Dance, another fabulous allegory about
I love that book.
The giraffe, and he can't dance, and how they make fun of him and how he finds his way. So you create these allegories in your own life. You tell 10-year-old, the reason 10, once they're starting to hit the puberty thing, they just want to be adults. After the 9-year change, from 9 on, they just want to be an adult. So you're training them how to be an adult. So you can tell allegories, but keep your stories about yourself and others and the stories you make up within 2 years. They say 1 year, but I think for sensitive children, you can be within 2 years of their lives. So you don't tell a 10-year-old a story about when you screwed up when you were 15. You tell them stories about how middle school was so challenging and the things that happened, or your fears, whatever it is. And so they align with you. And then bottom line, you set those limits. You have your family meeting. It's like, if you don't know, that's okay. I can decide all the rules for you. That's totally fine. And do it with if you have a co-parent, even if you're in separate households, you say, it's okay if you don't know, I'll set it. So these are the things that are going to be a rule. You can have a loud voice when you're upset for 2 minutes, and then it's done. Because sometimes you need to blow off steam. These are just things that would be work for me. You can use bad words, but they need to be in a letter. Or you can use bad words, but you have to pay $1 of your own money for every single one you use. Whatever. You have the rules about what happens. You can, maybe you have rules about attending school, about chores, you need to have rules about all of these things, about bedtime. Bedtime's a big issue for many of these children. So you set them up. So the 10-year-old has a choice. Either they make the rules in collaboration with you, or you make the rules. And then finally, I'm going to say that all of these conversations really need to be family-wide. If younger children aren't capable, that's fine, but at least with the parents and the child, so that we are all rowing in the same direction. And we can change. We can have another meeting on Sunday. It's good to have one every week. We can have another meeting on Sunday and change them, but the rules that we make today are going to stand for the week. And a lot of times when you start to line out everything that happens, it means that bedtime needs to be 2 hours earlier. And usually the 10-year-old's not psyched about that. So all of a sudden they want to become involved.
That was super helpful, I think, especially for it can be for a lot of different issues. Do you want to do one more question, or do you want to just kind of sum it up? You can pick whichever one you want to.
Let's do another question. Because everybody learns from every question. So useful.
Okay. This is about my son, actually. So my son was diagnosed with mild inattentive ADHD in 4th grade. He was struggling with the teacher that shamed him and punished him when he forgot to do things, and his grades slipped, and he ended up being just super miserable that year. So the next year I figured, okay, we'll get him diagnosed. We'll get him a 504, but turns out he didn't need it. The new teachers, I think, made a huge difference. There was no more shaming. The teachers were incredible that year, and he switched classes to different teachers, and he didn't need the 504. The principal said he's good. He got all A's. So now he's in 6th grade, middle school. I didn't know what to expect, how it was going to go, but he actually is incredibly independent. He's doing pretty much everything on his own, gets ready for school, makes his own lunch, packs his own bag, does his own homework. I never have to check up on him, which I'm surprised by. So he's taking care of pretty much everything on his own. He's very smart. He has a low decoding percentage. It's like 2%, but he would have gone into gifted if not for the decoding score. He is very interested in, it's almost obsessions, but I wouldn't say it would go that far. Science, engineering, building, trees, birds, Rubik's cubes, chess, and every single interest is very intense. He loves building things, but he also seems to be in his own world a lot. He doesn't respond to me when I talk to him. Sometimes if he does respond, it takes almost a full 30 seconds. He just seems to be in his head all the time. I mean, I would say spacey, but that's not a great term to say. This is how he was as a baby. He would lie there quietly after waking up from a nap for about 2-3 hours. No joke. Not make a peep. He's very social, though. He talks to kids all the time. He has tons of friends. He has no problem talking to people, he does a couple sports. He does lots of activities. He has to have a lot of downtime. So that's the only other thing that I'm noticing. So I'm wondering, what do I do with this? Because I try not to interrupt him as much. I try to be really sensitive to just his needing that in the head time. But what do we do in regards to 504, inattentive ADHD, being in his head, and just, I know that he's very sensitive. He's very emotionally sensitive. He's a huge empath. So I just want to support him better. Like, I just want to be able to know how to help him to, I guess, continue the way he is without stopping him from being that way. But also, he has to live in this world also.
Right.
So how do we do that?
He does have to live in this world. And it sounds like he is highly sensitive.
Yeah. 100%.
So a lot of highly sensitive children get diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, inattentive type. There used to be ADD, attention deficit disorder, but it's been eliminated from the diagnostic criteria. So now we say ADHD inattentive, but basically it means what we used to always call ADD. In general, we would say that I would say if the other markers for high sensitivity are there, that the children who are diagnosed ADHD inattentive are just highly sensitive, and they are processing so much, so deeply, noticing so many things and having such strong emotional reactions, which take time. It all takes a lot of time. It looks inattentive. I'm inattentive when I'm doing a lot of processing. I mean, I burn my toast every morning. You would think I would learn. And for sure, in my household, we would always say ADD. I mean, if somebody really had ADHD and that was a problem, but in our house, we're all HSPs. And we were always burning toast. And whatever, it's just the perfect emblematic example of what it's like to be highly sensitive and doing a lot. So first thing I want to say about this is I would not medicate a child. And most children with high sensitivity should not be medicated by attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder medications. The way we medicate ADHD, I'm using the royal we because I'm not a physician, but the way we medicate ADHD in the mental health and medical world is with stimulant medication. Now, a stimulant, you all probably, most people hearing this have a little caffeine thing, right? I don't usually have my caffeine very early or very late, but you better be sure I was on caffeine before we recorded this morning because we started, in the morning, my time, because I wanted my brain to be focused, right? That's a stimulant, and used in small portions, it's so amazing. But when we give stimulants to children, it overstimulates their brain. There are very few ADHD cases who really need to be on a stimulant. So we have to really be careful about differential diagnosis and thinking about medications. I'm just using this situation to give my little rant about medication and ADHD. It is a great medication. And one way to test it is some caffeine. Like if chocolate ice cream sends your kid off the rails like it did mine, then the chances are excellent that they do not have ADHD, because caffeine stimulants calm the brain of the ADHD person.
Definitely.
So that's just, you need to talk to your doctor, but you have to, please don't medicate children who are diagnosed ADHD if A, they're using screens, or B, it's medicated. You can start with a pediatrician, but you need psychiatric consult. You need true diagnostics. And a pediatrician is not actually qualified. They're the first line. They're the ones who notice and target problems and then lead the family into treatment. But just going all the time, it's sort of like antidepressants. It's great to start on antidepressants if you have depression with your general practitioner, but you must get psychiatric and psychological consultation. Okay, so there's my medication rant. Call me. I'll talk to you more about it if you need to. You too, Adrienne. So anyway, we have these kids that are really strongly focused, and that's a temperament. It's not a mental illness. It can become one. Like you said, it could become OCD if there aren't enough structures around, or if the child's brain is moving in that direction. It's both nature and nurture, in my opinion, clinically. So is it okay for them to be focused? Yes, so that you can't interrupt him, or it's hard to interrupt him. It's okay. It's totally fine. And you need rules. So, we give these kids an hourglass or a stopwatch or a timer, a kitchen timer, is the best tool ever. Or, my favorite one is the cube timer, even though I'm anti-plastic. It has 4 different times on the 4 sides. and you just turn the, say if you want 5 minutes, you put the 5 up and it beeps in 5 minutes, or you put the 15 up and there's one that goes up to an hour. It's a really
nice.
cool tool that kids, it's a great, stocking stuffer or Hanukkah gift. So you give them the power to times. It's sort of like any transition. I always say sensitive kids are excellent at transitions, but they need more time. They need more time. So if you want to say like, it's time for dinner, it's a classic example. And, you feel like he's not hearing you. You have to say, can we use his name or his first initial?
F.
Okay, you say, F, it's time for dinner. Do you hear me? No response. I'm going to set a 10-minute timer and then we're going to have dinner. And then when 5 minutes have gone by, you say, it's been 5 minutes. We're having dinner, in 5 minutes. And so you go on and you teach him to set the timer himself, not when he's distracted, but when he's engaged with you. He sounds like a sharp kid. He can totally do this. And you just say, like, you're growing up, you have to function in the world. I'm not going to be there to tell you to get up and go to school or to come to dinner. So you have to learn to become the adult of your brain, become the parent of your brain, start to time yourself. And there will be consequences if you don't respond to the timer. And you all get to decide in your family, as a family, what is strong enough to convince F to actually pay attention to the timer. Do you ever set timers for yourselves, you guys? I mean, I just ignore them. Like my phone goes off. I'm like, oh, cancel. I just keep looking at email.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of timers for him, and all of them are through Alexa. So he can say, Alexa, set a timer for blah, blah, blah. And it does really help. And the funniest thing is with the dinner, that is the worst time. Like he will not come. He will not hear me. And I said to my husband, I will say, hey, F, it's time for dinner in 10 minutes. And my husband's like, why are you telling him so early? I said, listen, trust me. Like he doesn't quite understand that he needs extra time to transition and to prepare. And he 100% needs that extra time. So yeah, I don't actually set a timer for dinner, but that is a really good idea. And then I do have him set timers for a lot of other things, especially when he needs to get ready for Boy Scouts, which is a full uniform. And he has to stop doing what he's doing, consciously go upstairs.
Boy Scouts is on the same day every week, right?
It is.
And so that day you need written on a big piece of newsprint or on the chalkboard wall or on a whiteboard, that day schedule, or on a piece of paper, you can type it up. Yeah. And he needs to time himself with your help, getting ready for Boy Scouts. And you go back and you backwards schedule that. And you say, what time do you need to, how long do you need to do this?
Mm-hmm.
If you brush your teeth with a Sonicare, it's 2 minutes, right? Does it take 2 minutes to brush your teeth? Well, heck no. You got to get yourself out of your daydream, into the bathroom. Then you got to lollygag in the bathroom for 3 minutes and then spend, 30 seconds putting the toothpaste on. And then you do the toothbrush and then you're like, you make a mess. So he gets to decide how long he wants to spend on all these things. And plus, let me just throw one more parenting intervention out there. It applies to all these kids that are, I'm going to say 6 or 7 and older. They need to be making dinner one night a week. It's very frustrating to make a meal and have it ready and then not have people come to the table.
He drives me crazy.
He needs that experience.
He needs to know what it's like.
He 100% does. Plus, he needs to know how to cook and feed himself. And, I did everything right with my kid, but I'm telling you, it wasn't until he lived in another family, which he's doing right now in Mexico at age 25. Now he's cooking most of the meals. And his other parent is a chef. Nonetheless, the kid could not make a meal for himself, even though he had to. Here's another thing in the terms of the transition, Adrienne. He needs a job that involves getting dinner on the table. It's not that he needs to come to dinner. Like I don't want these kids showing up to a set table with a lovely dinner. No, they need to be a part of it. So
I love that. Thank you so much. That really makes a lot of difference. And actually his ability to make himself food and prep and things like that has totally been much better this year. I feel like the maturity leap has been massive. So I think it's exactly the time for him to man up, I guess you could say, and we got to take some responsibility.
You know that great book, Fair Play, about owning the jobs. So when in middle school, when they start making dinner, they also make the grocery list, go and do the grocery shopping, prep.
Yeah, we just did a podcast on mental load for moms and some tools on how to get your boys to start holding some of that mental load, even as boys, but in your household, so they get used to the ownership of things. So that's totally on, in line with what we all agree with that. Quickly about your membership that I was a part of and how people can join that.
Thank you so much. It's
Yeah.
been really a pleasure. I love nothing more than coaching parents and asking questions. I sent Adrienne a little note and said, shh, don't tell anybody, but the parents are my favorite people to work with because they have so much power over sensitive youth and the adults that they're going to become. So, like I said, my membership is really cool. It includes, while you're a member, access to all of those master classes. And there are a lot of them that Adrienne was mentioning. It's been happening, the membership, Are You Highly Sensitive? It's called. It's been happening since December of 2019. I was prophetic. So I was actually doing Zoom and having anxiety on Zoom prior to the pandemic. But that required us all to learn fast, right? So we have office hours at different times. Each week, it's a different time to accommodate working parents. One of them is on the weekend. I have what's called sustainable economy. So everybody can choose their price that they want to pay for it. So everybody's always asking me, what are the different memberships? There's no difference. You pay what you can. And sustainable economy means that people who can afford more will pay more to support people who need to pay less. And then there's a middle price. Also, I want to say that I offer this, I think the best thing I do is called a one question call. These are one questions that we've been doing, right? And a one question call is something that you can purchase in my Are You Highly Sensitive store, and you can just call me. Your first one's free for anyone who calls me. And a one question call is you just bring this question and we unpack it fast and hard, and I give you lots of tools and you take lots of notes. If you're a member, the one question call is less than half the price of if you're not a member. So members have lots and lots of benefits, but it's really fun. So all you have to do is just drop me an email through one of my websites and just mention this podcast. We'll put a link in the notes, and I'm offering everybody this free gift of the 10 pillars of resilience. And also we'll show you how to get a one question call.
I love that. Thank you so much, Alane. We'll have everything in the notes for everyone to reach out to you and join, because it was an amazing experience for me. I know that. And we just really appreciate you being here. It was such a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you both for your work helping sensitive kids and families.